Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies, also known as PWD Allies podcast on your favorite app, where you find your suitable stations where you want to tune in to podcast, Spotify, Apple Store, Google Play Store, you name it. Do a Google search, and you'll look for me, and you'll find it. Today
You're everywhere on Google.
I'm everywhere, and everywhere there's podcasts available, you'll find me. And even on here, with their live shows too. But today is a special segment because I have a wonderful guest that I've been trying to get onto the show for a while. And here he is, Paul Doroshenko, aka Prairie Paul. Hello, Paul. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to have you on. And I listen to you all the time when you go into the local station on the Mike Smith show on CKNW, and I find it very informative, all the stuff that you talk about on the show there. And I thought, wow, I'd love to get Paul on here, and I guess just for the listeners to kind of figure, okay, well, how does Brent know Paul? And so, Paul, like we connected on Twitter. Of course, Elon calls it
a long time ago.
Oh yeah, quite a while. Yeah.
We've been following each other. I've been following all your advocacy. I mean, I'm always impressed. Your squeaky wheelism. I invented that term a long time ago, and there's some people who just push and push and push, and you get things done by being a squeaky wheel. Squeaky wheelism works.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
One of the things I just wanted to turn off my phone here. I just realized it was beeping, so I'll turn it off. One of the things I wanted to talk about, because I don't know if you saw a couple shows ago, we had Ellen Davies on, and he's a big photography nut. So we talked about photography and how it related to advocacy, and I just wanted to ask you if, and I know that we didn't rehearse this answer, or I didn't rehearse this question, but I wanted to ask if you think there's any connection between advocacy and your music or music in general, if there's a connection
absolutely.
between the two.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the first song that we released was "Lawyer Told Me Not to Talk to You."
Oh, okay.
And that's, that was an unintentional hit, I guess. The story behind that phrase is a good one. When I first became a lawyer, I was a young lawyer. This is 20 whatever years ago, and I would have people who were in trouble, and the police wanted to talk to them, and I went and asked the old.
Oh, your volume. There you go.
Yeah, did it come back? Good.
Yeah, okay, it came back.
Just got put my phone on airplane mode here.
Oh, okay.
It was just went to pick up my phone. I would go ask the senior lawyers, what do I do in these cases? What's the circumstance? Jesus, it minimized me to nothing here. Try and make this screen big again. There we go. What do I do? What do I tell people? What do I tell a client in these circumstances where I've got the police want to talk to them? And they'd always say, well, you tell them that on the advice of counsel, I'm not going to provide a statement. And so I would explain that to people, and then they would struggle to try and say it. And I'd ask them, so what are you going to say? Well, you said that I'm not supposed to provide. And it was frustrating because everybody would struggle with it. And of course they're, terrified because they're going to be in, basically the police have them in the detachment in a little interrogation room when this is going on half the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I started simplifying it, and I simplified it to, my lawyer told me not to talk to you. And that worked pretty well, but then I would ask people to repeat it back. So what did I say? And they'd say, you said that I'm not supposed to say it. So they still couldn't get it. And then finally I dropped the my. And that was the big difference. It was that the pronoun that people couldn't deal with. And when I dropped the my, suddenly people could repeat it back to me, right? What are you supposed to say? Lawyer told me not to talk to you. Lawyer told me not to talk to you. And if I get them to say it 3 times, they'll usually remember it. Now, I discovered that was so effective that we started joking about it, that we should have a patent on a phrase, right? If the police are try to question you, all you have to say is, the lawyer told me not to talk to you. Because what do? You blame the lawyer. Right? Easy. And I don't care. Blame me. So you're not really feeling like you're taking responsibility for something, for being impolite, essentially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because that's how people view it in Canada. Like they're being questioned by the police, and they think, oh, well, I've always been told I'm supposed to tell the truth and talk to the police. And the police are out there to get you, right? The whole idea is to gather as much statement as you can get, so you can find some contradiction that you can then use in court and cross-examination of that individual. They can't take the witness stand. If they do take the witness stand, they're going to be impeached by something you said before that could seem innocuous to you at the time.
Right.
So it's a wonderful thing if people don't say anything to the police. If they keep their mouth shut, you have a lot more tools in your toolbox. Client comes to you and they've given a lengthy statement to the police, you might as well just dump your toolbox on the floor. Like you're showing up at the job site with a hammer and not even a screwdriver. And I explain this to people, but when I started using lawyer told me not to talk to you, it was just incredibly effective. Like every time my clients could do it, they could say it, they could remember it. So we joked about it, we should patent it. And one day I thought, I wonder if I could trademark it. So I applied for a trademark and I got the trademark.
Nice.
Which shocked me. Yeah, I've got a nice little plaque on my office wall that I own the trademark for this thing. I'm going to have to renew it at some point. But then we thought, if we own this trademark, we better put it on something. So first we put it on some tote bags, and then, people were joking about it, and somebody said, you should write a song. And I was like, okay, well, I've written lots of songs over the years. I sing all the time. I got friends who are in the music industry. Why don't I do it? So I wrote the song, you broke my heart and left me there to die. You told me 3.14 wasn't pi. You left me, took my money, my dog too. Lawyer told me not to talk to you. And we released it. And we released it on our office YouTube channel. And we were up to something like 64,000 views.
Wow.
Before I moved it off there and put it on my personal one. And that was quite unexpected, I can tell you, but I'm so happy.
I'm still waiting for one of our
song.
videos to hit 64,000 views.
Oh yeah.
I thought when we moved it over to my personal YouTube channel that we'd get more action on it, because 64,000 views, I thought somebody's searching for it, somebody's going to find it. Nah, it was a mistake. We should have left it on the office channel. But it's on Apple Music and Spotify and all of those things too. And it's a great music video, considering we shot it in a day. But the quality of the song overall is really good. And lawyer told me not to talk to you. Like I get messages from people who have our T-shirts or our sweatshirts or whatever, and it's an opening to talk to people who you want to talk to, and it's a shutdown to the people you don't want to talk to. It's just damn funny.
It's funny because as a parent, I can totally relate to what you're saying about that people would get it wrong. You'd ask them to say, repeat it back to me. And that's what I always tell my son too, and he's 15 years old now. But, when I talk to him, I look him in the eyes and I slow it down so he's getting the comprehension. And I say, okay, what did I just say? And so I get him to repeat it back to make sure, right?
Yeah.
So as a parent, I get it, right?
Well, and the people who are vulnerable, right? They're sitting in your office and they're shit scared because they're under investigation for something.
Yeah.
And so you're hoping that they pick up some of the stuff that you're laying down.
Yeah.
And so that's why you have to basically, you always I always explain. You see this wall? You know, I
Mm-hmm.
used to have a brick wall in my office. I say, see this brick wall? Now I point it across the street. You're the brick wall. And if the police say anything to you, you just say, lawyer told me not to talk to you. And you can say it twice, put your head down. And after
Yeah.
that, they'll usually leave you alone, unless it's a really, really serious one. But if you just repeat that, you know, you'll get through. And the interesting thing is that lawyers in Ontario started using it.
Oh,
And it became really big in Ontario. And I think they're probably all using it in the criminal bar there. And the lawyers in the criminal bar in BC never really picked it up. You know,
no.
everything's always provincial, right? And
Yeah.
What
if you're a
what
little
is your
bit,
what is your favorite video that you've put out? Like one of your favorite tunes over time that you've done? Do you have a favorite at all, Paul?
oh, I think Christmas on the Moon. Um, you know, the my hockey song. I really like my hockey song. I just wish somebody who was a better singer had done it than me. I mean, my singing skills are not great. I'm okay, and there's lots of musicians who have made careers with less skill than me. You know, Willie Nelson isn't the greatest guy to listen to if you
Well,
stop
I know the
listen to
other
his
hockey
voice.
song. Hello out there, we're on the air. It's hockey night tonight. I know that
Yeah,
one.
I think
Yeah.
mine is much better. Drop the puck,
Yeah.
it's called.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I think I
Yeah.
have heard
Drop
that
the
one
puck,
then.
lace up the skates, get a shot on
Right.
goal. Drop the
Okay.
puck and lace up the skates, 'cause hockey is our rock and roll.
Hmm. I
I
have heard
think
that
it's
one.
catchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting to own a business that I can use it for marketing for,
Oh
because
well.
I just like the line, hockey is our rock and roll.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'm very happy with the way the song turned out. But I still think somebody else should sing it. Um, because I thought about it, and I did actually have somebody else do a demo. Um,
We're trying to get Michael Bublé to be a sponsor for the channel. So
well,
if ever becomes a sponsor for the channel, we'll get Michael Bublé to sing your song.
Well, if he sang that song, it would be a
Yeah. Yeah.
hit. I mean, it would be a real hit. It's got everything there. That it's the catchiest tune. It's fun. It covers everything. It's the real Canadian song. But you know, really, the greatest failing of it is me. Is my singing, because I just can't belt it out. When we did have somebody, a professional ringer, do it, it was actually almost too smooth, too good. I was
Hmm.
like, oh well, you know, there's no edge to it at all.
Mm.
Oh
So
yeah.
I decided.
Well, I think you do quite well with that, Paul. It's maybe do a duo with Michael Bublé if we actually got him on. You got me
Yeah.
cool.
Well, if you can get him on, God, I'd love him to do this song.
Yeah.
I
But
actually think some of the best singer-songwriters are the ones with a bit of their voice is a little bit rough, you know?
Yeah.
Like on the last one of the last videos that I put out, that I produced for you, was the bus trip one, and
Right.
I used a replacement song, "Kiss Me on the Bus." I don't know if you know. Paul Westerberg and the Replacements. If
I
you
know the replacements. Yeah.
Yeah, if you look up Paul Replacements and Paul Westerberg, I mean, he's got a very distinctive voice, but it's not really a pretty voice, but it works, right? It works for what he needs to do, and
Johnny Cash's last four albums, he
Hmm.
was not a pretty voice anymore,
yeah.
and it was that much better. You know, when he
Oh.
sang Rusty Cage, I mean, you wired me awake and hit me with a hand of broken nails. I mean, it was amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Paul, so at your firm, where you are, Kyla Lee, she's an amazing associate, one of your associates there, and she's
Kyla's a
wonderful.
freak.
Yeah, the videos that you put in there with her on that one segment too. I can't recall which video that was. That was pretty cool.
She was in Lawyer Told Me Not to Talk to You. She was in Women Whiskey Lawyers, but she had a wig on and nobody recognized her.
Oh,
And you have to go back and look, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe that is Kyla.
yeah,
And Christmas on the Moon. Can't remember if she had a name or a character. She was supposed to sing backup, and she was supposed to sing the one portion where there's a discussion.
hmm,
I had practiced it so many times, and by the time I went into the studio to record it, I'd been doing that, the response voice for the female interest in the song, from the start, and I just sang it, and my producer was laughing and laughing and laughing, and he said, "We're just leaving you in. We're not bringing Kyla in. It's just fine."
I saw the recent there was a photo that you put out there. We had Wrigley with the dog, Kyla's dog. Well, that was hilarious.
Oh yeah, they're our Halloween ones. We did not plan that. That was not planned. I did not know what I was going to dress up as, if anything. We have some police outfits here in the office that just we've acquired over the years for whatever reason, from films that were filmed in Vancouver. When they cleared out their stuff, somebody went down there and saw something and thought it would be funny to buy. So I decided to dress as a police officer. Apparently last year after Halloween, Kyla, saw the wedding dress on some website for used wedding dress that was really cheap, and ordered it, never tried it on, and decided, oh, you know what, I'll go just as a bride, something I'll never ever be, for Halloween. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go as a cop, something I'll never ever be. So we show up on Halloween morning, and everybody, like, we have a contest in the office, right? And we've never won. Neither Kyla or I have ever won. It's always been a hands down winner. We've known exactly who the winner was when we saw it. But we stepped out in these outfits, and Kyla said, you know what, I last year I ordered a little prisoner outfit for Wrigley, and she found it. So we got in our outfits at like 9:35, and by 9:38 we had done those photos and put them out. And they were pretty funny.
I got a good laugh out of that. As soon as I saw, just roaring laughing. I was like, oh man.
Poor little Wrigley.
I'll add them to the I'll add them to this video if you can find. I'm no longer on Twitter, so.
Well, I understand that. Reasonable decision to make.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't.
Yeah, it's unfortunately the platform's still there. It's just a lot of changes that are happening, and I find that there's so much toxicity in different areas. But one thing I've learned, Paul, is I try to block out all of that, and I just keep on going forward on advocacy and making my point across that how things need to change, because based on policies really, like, it doesn't matter who's. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to continue to talk about Twitter a bit before we move on to advocacy.
We've set you off now.
Yeah, well, I just think of what a valuable resource it used to be, and it really was the promise of social media to allow to have pretty good discussions. And I think how many people I became friends with, like people I really trust from my engagement on Twitter, and a lot of the people I've met in some form, either like this or in some other form since, and it's great. And the destruction that has been caused in such a short period of time. I mean, forget the fact that it's worth 40% of what it was when he bought it, which really calls into question whether or not he's the business genius everybody seems to have thought that he was for the longest time. But the loss in value for us as a society to have those discussions, and that I'm shocked there's no replacement yet. And for journalists to be able to go out there and to be able to recognize that some people are recognized voices. I never a blue check mark. Kyla got a blue check mark. But the back in the day when it was actually meant something. It's just a loss to our society. It's a loss to the potential of being able to have fairly complex discussions with a lot of good, thoughtful, serious input and fun and a human discussion. And now it's just gone to shit.
Well, also the fact that you could be there's the old saying, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? You've heard that saying before. And the one thing I liked about Twitter, and I'm gonna name drop a little bit, but it just kind of, for me, summed up the nice thing of Twitter when it was first started was I was just kind of trolling Kiefer Sutherland on Twitter because I happened to see that because I'm a big chess nut. I like playing chess, and I just happened to see that he had a picture of him playing chess, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I just wrote a quick little thing. I said, "Let the Wookiee win," and that's all I said. Let the Wookiee win. As a reference to Star Wars. And and I got a reply back from him, and I thought that's so cool. That. Oh, yeah. I took the time to just say a little stupid little thing, and he actually replied back, and I thought that was really cool. And where else can you do that? Where else can you have that like immediate 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing, where it's like you get a immediate response back to somebody.
Well, there was an artist that I reached out, and I kind of winged it one time. Paul, I used to have the Twitter space. Was where the show started from, and I reached out one day, and Neil says, "Well, I mean, do you have anyone in mind?" And I said, "Well, there was this lady started following me on Twitter. I thought, oh, okay, who is she? And looking up, oh, she's a music artist. I thought, wow, okay, and I thought, okay, well, maybe there was one of those little trolls that they'll copy Twitter accounts. Sometimes you get clones, right? And I'm seeing all different messages, and she's messaging back and forth of different people, and so I messaged her and I said, hey, would you be interested in coming onto my show one day? And she says, I would love to. And I thought, okay. And she goes, talk to my agent. I said, well, who, I'm thinking, well, who's your agent? I'm thinking, I don't know who your agent is. And she left it like that. I thought, oh, okay. So I'm kind of lost, Paul. I was going, okay, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, okay, Neil, what do I do here? Who do I reach out to? I don't know. So but I found out that it was brain lapse there. It was he basically handles a whole bunch of different artists here in
Eric Alper.
Eric Alper, yeah. I just couldn't think of his last name. I knew it was Eric, and I thought, I'm not going to screw this up. So anyway, I reached out, and then he sends me a whole list of music artists. I could not believe basically like a mic drop, it was like a jaw drop. Like, wow. And so he connected me with Bree Taylor. And so I think Bree Taylor, I thought, and then I found out that Bree Taylor's father is a well-known music artist. And basically it was, she just came on and she performed, kind of sang a little tune of her own song, and it kind of blended in perfectly when I actually had her on. And it was interesting.
That was a good segment, because she's hearing impaired a little bit too, which is
yeah.
I'm always surprised that from time to time I mentioned somebody who was a famous person, and they would reply to me on Twitter. Dave Wakeland, who's the head of the band English Beat, I've had fairly long conversations with him and direct messages on Twitter, and it's quite satisfying because I was such a big fan as a teenager, and in my most depressed years. It was some of his music has got me through, and I still listen to it. And it was an opportunity for me to express to him my gratitude for doing what he did. He wasn't doing it anticipating the 15-year-old Paul Doroshenko worried about losing our home in Edmonton. But it was some great assistance, and to be able to talk to him on Twitter is like, wow, this is great. Unfortunately,
it's totally amazing. Just the people that I am on Twitter, even now, I still have a lot of different contacts that I stay in contact, and every so often I'll reach out and go, hey, how are you doing? Reach out to me if you need to, have a one-on-one discussion. I mean, things that are bothering you or whatever. And there's still a few people that I will still stay in contact. There's some of them that are kind of, they kind of went their own way, and that's okay too. Of course, I realize in advocacy, there's always different viewpoints, and getting to a mutual kind of understanding or agreement that yes, having the solution at the end of the day, they all want the same thing. It's just all different viewpoints on how to get to it. It's like that way with music too. It's different ideas of okay, like here's a chorus of, and I'm sure you've learned this too, is maybe if you do a higher pitch on this area versus like you know
Well,
like
the housing speculating concerns about property prices and things like that. That was one group on
yeah,
Twitter that I was connected to,
yeah,
and then there's the other group that's I'm marginally connected to trans rights, and then
right,
there's various different groups, and they don't necessarily always meet, right? You can have a pretty conservative group over here, and some of the people I used to interact with a lot about real estate speculation, concerns
hmm
about
I actually watched one of your videos about speculation just as a precursor to the show, just so I had a bit more knowledge about you, and I thought it was an interesting video actually.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah, different viewpoints on stuff. It's so important though, because hearing both sides of where people are coming from, and like especially with that war that's going on. I mean, I hear a lot of people just saying they just want peace. They just want the fighting to be done with, and it's sad, right? And I've learned too is that I don't say yes or no on either side. I say yeah, like it's sad that's happening, and it
well,
shouldn't.
Israel, Hamas / Palestine is
Yeah,
a almost impossible thing to comment on without like
yeah,
raising
no,
the hair on the back of people's necks, and it's something that needs to
pretty
be
much.
discussed. We have to talk about it. But I recognize that although I may have more knowledge than a lot of people, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm knowledgeable about it.
Mhm.
I know the history of Israel. I know the history of the Jewish population pretty well. I came close to going into Holocaust studies when I was finishing my law degree because the U of A was trying to scoop me back into the history department.
Oh,
And that was my direction at that point. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I talked to Raoul Hilberg, who was the leading expert on Holocaust studies. He wrote The Destruction
oh,
of the European Jews. He came to a conference, and I ended up talking to him for some time. He said, don't go into Holocaust studies. He said,
mm,
don't do it. He said it's. He explained lots of reasons why, and we
right.
probably could talk about that for another half an hour. But he said, go into law and live your life and try and do good things. Well, okay, I can do that.
Yeah, and
Um,
doing that, and you're doing music too.
Well, we do all sorts of crazy things here. We broke the mold, and although there's probably around 35 people who work
Maybe
in the
we need to
firm.
hire you for a class action lawsuit against the government about
Class action lawsuits.
about about legislated poverty.
Well, let me tell you about the
Could you take
last
that?
time
Could
we
you take
tried to
that
get.
on?
Let me tell you about the last time we tried to get into a class action lawsuit. The lawyers who do that and actually know what they're doing with that really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I sued the BC government under the former government, right, when it was Christy Clark.
Hmm.
Right.
On behalf of British Columbians, I was one of the lawyers on it, but I was like the leading guy on it because they were spending so much money in the advance of an election on marketing. Like their
Hmm.
marketing budget was huge, and of course they call it education, but really that was back when they were like pushing. And BC is a great place to live. And if you're a first-time home buyer, you can get $40,000 low-interest loan from the BC government. It's something that nobody did. Like nobody took them up on that one.
Hmm.
And they were running those ads like crazy. And it was Christy Clark's government doing that. And I got
Oh,
involved in politics in BC when I first moved here from Edmonton in 1999. And one of
mm,
the main reasons was that election. That was when Ujjal Dosanjh was the short-term premier before
that's right.
Gordon Campbell. That election, the NDP were running ad after ad after ad.
Mm,
ICBC, check out our rates.
yeah.
It's a monopoly, like
Hmm.
on basic insurance, and they were running those all sorts of ads. And I went and I met Gordon Campbell, and I said, I will work for you. I'll volunteer here for you, but I want to promise that in the 6 months before any election, you do
Mhm.
not run anything but like essential advertising. He said, Paul, you know what? I agree with you 100%. I think it's disgusting. It's one of the things I'm going to put a stop to, and I'm going to do it. And you know what? He did. The next election, they had no advertising in the
Wow.
6 months before. And I was like, okay, I'm back. I'm going to work for you again. Then the next one started to creep in. And I said, Gord, what's going on? He said, Paul, I can't be a dictator. And I've got a whole, government of people I've got to appease. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to slide. And then, of course, Christy Clark gets in, and it's full on, nonstop. And this justification of this is education, it's public education. No, it's not. That's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. So we watched the amount of money that was being spent. And it was another lawyer, David Fay, and I started talking about it on Twitter. And we said, is it possible? Because this money could be spent on so many different things. Like, this money goes to the government. I pay my taxes. Everybody's paying their taxes. We have an expectation that the government's not going to spend it for their own benefit, which is to be reelected, right? And the fiduciary obligation, and you can think of, there is a fiduciary obligation, as far as I'm concerned, to kids who are in hospital, to anybody who's on social assistance, to anybody who's being taken care of by the medical system, that there is an obligation to spend this money properly. And so we sued, right? We sued the BC Liberals because they were the ones who were getting the benefit of it. And we sued the provincial government to stop the spending as a class action lawsuit, seeking to be certified as a class action. And we did it in like 45 days before the election. The government pulled all the advertising. The BC Liberals didn't get a majority. A lot of people looked at us and said, not Rob Shaw or his other fellow who wrote the book there, whose name I can't remember.
Richard's husband.
Richard, yeah, they didn't include us in the book anymore. But all sorts of other people looked at us and said, you know what? I think you cost them a seat. And the NDP ended up obviously forming government after that. So then we had our class action lawsuit, and we had to follow through, right? And we were doing this, weren't charging for it. And the government hired some pretty good lawyers, smart guys, nice people, to oppose it. The Liberals had their lawyers too, and they sought to strike our pleadings on a couple of grounds. One is you couldn't sue a political party because it's not an entity. Interestingly,
so what is it then?
Well, that's the thing. Let me know if there's any noise here. Wrigley, I think, was just hitting his water bowl.
No, I don't know. I don't hear. No.
Okay. But you couldn't sue a political party because a political party isn't an entity. Maybe the agent for the party you could, but not the party. Yeah. So actually, a party can't sue you either. So if you were to say that conservatives are dirtbags, they can't sue you, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I would say that that's wrong. But in any event,
I guess the phrase comes out. The lawyer told me not to talk to you.
You're right about the spending though, because I mean I have to say, like, even if you were somebody that was totally clueless about the politics in BC, like if you knew nothing about anything, like you could not avoid but see the money dripping from the advertising that was going. It was disgusting, the amount of money.
TV ads, print ads everywhere, not just like cheap stuff on the internet, like big billboards. Billboards are big money. You can spend $10,000 on a 1 month buy of a billboard. That can go a long way. We were talking millions and millions of dollars of advertising. And
huge dollars they just kept on just going everywhere.
Your and my money being used to try and get them reelected purely by just advertising and using the same colors as the party and everything in the ads, very similar look to stuff. And I thought, my view was, again, I see a fiduciary obligation. I studied fiduciary law, but it's not something I do every day. It was one of the courses I really liked. And so we filed this thing, and they sought to strike it. And it was, of course, the election was over, and maybe we accomplished what we needed through the election. And I noticed the NDP did some, but not too much advertising. And they should know that I'm still watching and still trying to figure out a different way to force the government. But the court ultimately said, look, it isn't a fiduciary obligation. that the government's got with your tax money. That's extending it too far. There may be certain fiduciary obligations that exist, but generally speaking, tax revenue is not a fiduciary obligation. And then the BC Liberals succeeded on their point, which was that we can't sue a party because they're a non-entity. So in the end, it was unfortunately clarified the status of parties in Canada, because there was only one case that sort of dealt with that. And then the BC Liberals wanted to come back at me for costs to get our, this money that we did get some money. Like, we got $12,000. We donated most of it to charity. We left a little bit in the trust account. It's still, there's a working group that chooses where it's going to go. But we kept that money to cover costs, and the BC Liberals wanted costs. They sent me a letter saying, we demand the cost of this action. And I said, how can you get costs if you're not an entity?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you didn't have to reply. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to sit on your hands because we couldn't collect because you're not an entity. And they never came back at me, which made a lot of sense in the end. We figured it out. They weren't getting any of that money.
Well, the other...
It's so it's so interesting looking at when the governing party was, like, when they were in, and it was like nothing else mattered. Like, it doesn't matter if whatever the other government and the opposition would say. It's like, well, we say what goes, and then we can spend like a drunken sailor, should we say, right? I mean, and they just kept on going. And I remember.
Well, it seems in provincial politics in BC that they start off with high expectations of themselves, and they hold themselves to a high standard, and then it just slides, and you just sort of hope that they keep managing well.
Well,
and
they were in power for a long time too, and I think that was a part of the problem. Yeah. But what I was gonna say was, I remember when they started to do these. Remember, they would have like $2,000 a plate dinners where you could buy $2,000 plate dinner to talk to Christy Clark, or it might have been even more than $2,000. It might have been like $10,000. I don't even know, but it was at least like $2,000. And it was just like, are you kidding me? And it's so offensive. Our provincial governments are supposed to work for the voters. You're not supposed to make it an exclusive, VIP
club to get access to the premier.
Yeah, it must be a gold plate or something like that. Yeah. I mean,
that really rubbed me the wrong way. As soon as I saw that, I checked out on that.
Some history about that. So Gordon Campbell's elected, and we have the premier's dinner, and I'm going to the premier's dinner. It was pretty funny, and we're making jokes and stuff. It's a nice time. I danced with him. That's back when he was still a drinker, before he stopped drinking, right? After his DUI in Hawaii.
Right.
And he was a lot of fun. He was a nice guy, and pretty genuine in his desire just to improve lives for everybody. His method to get there may not be what everybody agrees with, and it depends on how it hits you, I guess, but decent guy. So Premier's dinner, I'm paying $250 to go to that. It's not much of a dinner, as you can imagine, but this was quite a bit of money for me back then. It was a big hit. And then, there's the odd event. I could go to the Christmas party because I was in his riding. I'd run into him there and get a chance to chat for a minute or so. And then they introduced something they called Club 300. And Club 300, what is Club 300? Well, pay $300 and you get invited to some other things. And I approached Gord about it at an event. I think it was the Christmas party that year. And I said, Gord, what is with this Club 300? This is not good. He's like, I don't agree with it. He said, it's the party's doing this. And I joked that was every Newfoundland sealer's dream, was to Club 300 seals. Anyway, people nervously laughed at my joke, including Gordon. And I was not happy with it and the direction of it. And again, he said, this is one of those things where I'm the leader of the party, but I don't make those decisions. There's all sorts of other people in. And he said when he was first elected, everybody expected him to sit on every committee, and everybody expected him to be and he said, and any committee he sat on, he said nobody would talk. They would all just wait for him to talk. And so he pulled himself away from all of those committees because he said, "This government, this is just the way government works." Like, he won with this overwhelming mandate. There was the NDP were down to 2 seats, and so it was the spinning out of control that happens, I guess, in all of those circumstances. You don't necessarily want it to be, as I say, a dictatorship, but then they moved from that, access to, which was pretty easy access if you wanted to talk to the premier, to Christy Clark charging $2,000 a plate in order for you to be able to talk to the premier. And it got to the, I totally separated with the BC Liberals when Christy Clark became premier. Not until she became premier. I was not a fan of hers. I didn't really I'd met her and I wasn't impressed. But then when she became premier, I was just like, this is out of control. Like, she's got 2 bullies basically working for her. And her skill is the attack dog. She had not the management skill or the temperament to be able to listen to people, think about what needs to be done, actually consider their interest, and then act or not act depending on the circumstances. So, boy, I'm glad she's out. Oh my goodness, it's almost like traumatizing to think back of.
Oh, I remember that, going back on that is memory lane, I call it. There was a lot of advocacy going on at the time. I used to live in Nanaimo, and Sonia and I, we bumped into this lady. We had lived there, and her parents lived there, so we lived there, but the transit there sucked really bad. So we really missed it. But we said, well, we're going to move to the Lower Mainland when the opportunity came, and her parents got really pissed. They weren't happy. But her dad said, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, you guys got to be happy if that's what you want. So eventually we moved into a nice place, but now we're back in Victoria. But anyway, getting back to that though, Paul, while we were in Nanaimo, this goes back to when Christy Clark was, their government was in power, and it all started where they had about a bus pass. That's where it all started. And I was watching this on social media, and I was like, okay, there's something going on here. The government was saying, well, we're going to do a shell game. We'll get this and this much. You can have $77, but we're going to take away $52, but you got $25 left over. It was a little shell game. It backfired on them. They realized they screwed up, like bad PR announcement on that one. So they kind of wore that one. Well, anyway, the lady that we got to know, she's a real feisty lady. She has foster children that she basically brings up, and they all live in the same house, and she keeps them in line, Paul. Oh yeah, they can't get away with nothing. I mean, so basically she said to us, hey, you guys want to go on a rally? We want to get this bus pass back, and we want to raise the rates. I said, okay, we're game. I've got all these posters made up. So we did a peaceful rally on the side of the road, and she's got a megaphone, and you can imagine it was echoing. So I was okay. I mean, whatever. She's making her point. So Michael DeJong at the time, he was giving a conference meeting downtown Nanaimo in the convention center. I thought, okay. I mean, I didn't really know what was going on, right? So we all went through kids and, Mom, what's going on? Oh, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing, and Brent and Sonia are here. We're going to help us out. And it was echoing off all the buildings, Paul. Hey, ho, ho, BC Liberals got to go. And it was echoing so louder and louder. So she cranks up the volume. So now it's echoing big time. And next day I looked up there and I see this Michael DeJong looking out the window, probably thinking, what is going on? Because it's now interrupting his meeting that he was giving a speech in there, and he couldn't even hear himself think. So he looked out there and he just looked, and those beady eyes, he's like this. He's like I'm watching you. And I did the same thing right back at him. So anyway, as the time went on, we'd find out, well, where Christy Clark would be. So she would get in her vehicle, phone me up. Okay, I'll be there in like 2 minutes. What are you talking about? So she'd be whipping down the road. And I said, well, don't speed. I mean, I'm thinking, oh, God forbid, lady, don't, And so she goes up this curb and poosh, she took out the muffler on her vehicle. So she had to get that fixed. She was determined. She wanted to meet with Christy Clark and then basically let her know, it's not okay based on their policies. And But one thing is that Christy Clark's her team had already pre-scheduled her. So if she said she was going to be in a certain spot, it was already a half hour. Like she was already long gone. We then became to realize that yeah, like the party's out of touch. They don't want to listen to people in general. It was only a self-serving interest, right? Um, and I realized that advocacy needed to be really ramped up. So as we said, like the NDP won majority. So fast forward through that is I got to meet with the then premier. They were in opposition. Like I basically connected with them on Twitter. I said, hey, so you're in opposition, and he says, yeah, and he says, sure, yeah, come on up to the office, right? And so I said to Sonia that we're going to go and meet John Horgan at the BC legislature. She goes, oh wow, and I said, yeah. So I talked to the staff, and they're like, yeah. So we talked to the security at the legislature, and oh, can I help you? And we're here to see John Horgan. You're here to see John Horgan. Okay, and who are you? Okay, so and so they take your ID, and then they give you back a little badge, and then he sent one of his staff down, and they said, oh no, we're gonna give them these passes. So we got to go through all these corridors throughout the building, and it was so cool. And so we got to meet with him for lunch in his office when he was in opposition. So we sat in his office and we started talking about the reason why they took away a bus pass. Anyway, fast forward, it still never was restored, but that's something to keep advocating to get fixed. But we went to a lot of conference meetings with the party at the time, and I got to know John really well. Sonia and myself did. Sonia and John are really Trekkie, Star Trekkie. They're back and forth. So you can imagine, Paul, they're standing there in a conference and talking back and forth, and his staff were around him. You could see some security here and there, and they were kind of keeping an eye. And then John just kind of pushed his hand, like, yeah, go away. Like, and it was like, seriously, he goes, like, go away. Like, I'm talking to her and thinking, wow, like John. And him and I would stand there and I'd have a beer. Like we'd go and give a ticket, and you go and get a free complimentary beer. Actually, no, there was two of them. After that, you have to go and buy your own. So, but I only needed two. So yeah, I know my limit. But I had three.
Prior to the 2017 election.
Yeah. It was prior to the 2017 election, but
yeah,
like we went to conferences when they formed government, but like we would talk on a one-to-one basis, and I got to learn a lot about who John was. Like he was such a real easygoing guy. Like he just cared so much for people. But one thing he did tell me, though, Paul, it always resonated in my mind and always stuck with me. He says, Brent, I'm going to tell you something, though. I said, what? He goes, I will do the best I can. If I become premier, I will do the best I can. I can't promise everything. I can't make everybody happy. And I'm not about to make everybody happy because I know I'm not going to be able to. And now that line always stuck with me. And then when he became premier, he reminded me what he said when he was in opposition. When I talked to him, he goes, remember when you and I stood there and we were talking? I go, yeah. And he goes, I'm going to try my best. And then I got to learn as one time we were in a conference and they had a break. And so anyway, I was in, Sonia had gone to the ladies' room. I'd gone to the men's room and whatever, right? And anyway, here's a guy that is washing his hands. He's like, was washing his hands. And I'm like, oh. And I hear him say, kind of like looking over, oh my God, that's John. So anyway, hey, John. He goes, oh my God. He says, I run into you. Now look where I'm running into you. He says, I better not stay in here too long. They're going to think you're holding me hostage. Oh, I said, they're going to have negotiators then to basically take, to kind of negotiate and make sure that the premier is actually okay. He goes, it's fine. He told me about Twitter. And anybody who's actually like a political figure or you're advocating for change, you're always going to take that hit, right? So when I would see posts from John, it wasn't him, it was his staff. But he would tell his staff what to type. The odd time he would get on himself and type. And there was things that
I've talked to MPs who do their own tweets, and somebody from their office will also do their own tweets, and sometimes they'll read them, and MLAs too. I know Mike Farnworth reads his, writes his tweets and does his replies, but he doesn't tweet very often. but depends on their policy. But the premier, I think it's probably almost always somebody else, because that's anything they tweet can be a news story. Any
Oh yeah,
utterance can be a news
and that's the
story.
thing. What he told me is that it's not always him, and he says, but I see what you're advocating for. I watch, even though I may not be typing that in.
Yeah.
I'm watching and I'm hearing. I got my other MLAs, my other staff are telling me what's going on, and keep doing what you're doing. And I said, okay, like I won't stop. I'll keep advocating because there's always something new to advocate for, to try to create change for the better. And I
Thank
said,
you,
I know
Allison.
I can't change the world, but I will do the best I can to make things better. And he goes, that's all it is. And he actually had to take a step off Twitter for a while because it's his position. And for myself, I went through the same thing. Last year, I was still on, but as Neil would probably tell you, I had some threats that were thrown toward me as advocating, and somebody got a hold of my phone number, Paul, and they wouldn't leave me alone. I had to change
Yep.
my phone number, and what a freaking headache that was. Oh, just change your number; it would be easy.
Well,
No,
that's one of the things that I wanted to actually talk about is
yeah,
like
yeah,
even going back to Christy Clark,
hmm
um, you have to realize that she was getting a ton of death threats,
Oh yeah,
especially at the
yeah,
end, right? And
yeah.
that's
oh yeah,
not cool. I don't care if
yeah,
I don't care if you don't like the person, you don't you
Yeah.
don't you don't do that to anybody,
no,
My concern with it was, here I was being critical of her, critical of the government, particularly the what I felt was them blowing up the housing market in so many different ways. And I know that detached people would read that
hmm
and persuade themselves that they should be angrier than maybe they
hmm
should be, and not looking at it objectively. And that always concerns me. I wrote to David Lametti, who was our justice minister up until a couple months back,
right, yeah,
proposing an amendment to the criminal code to deal with people who are public personas essentially, and I mean you would be covered in it. And I was thinking of Jody Vance and so many others who have had harassment. I've had all sorts of targeted harassment, lots of it, over the years for various different things that I've advocated for, or just because somebody hates me because I'm a drunk driving lawyer,
yeah,
5 days a week. Um, and I think that it's completely open for them to change the criminal code to create an 810 recognizance peace bond thing for people who are in politics,
mm,
media. Think of these journalists, the women who have had the horrible things said to them. I
mm,
look at some of the things that have been sent to Kyla over the years
mm.
when she takes a position on something. Um,
I can imagine.
it seems to me that the government has got to step in at some point and deal with this to tone it down. And death threats to the prime minister
Hmm
seem to sometimes get attention of the RCMP and sometimes not. And this is going to have to stop. I mean,
yeah.
because otherwise we're going to see more and more escalation of it. And people are sitting at home in their little vacuum chambers where they're,
Yeah,
watching Jordan Peterson videos or what have you, and getting in, persuading themselves that they've got to act on their stupid idea.
yeah,
And some people are going to end up hurt.
hmm
And we're scaring people away from public engagement
hmm
if we're not protecting them, and in particular women. Like
Yeah.
it's
absolutely.
pretty obvious that women don't want to go into politics. Why? Because they're going to facing this or
Yeah.
into anything that's public. So journalism.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
How
and
much of your
they feel that they're being tormented. They say, well, what's the
mm,
point? And because I know recently that I know the BC government's really trying to get that bail reform done, and I believe that's, I guess, from Ottawa, and they just seem to be tiptoeing around on getting that done, and they're frustrated because I mean, I know downtown Victoria, for instance, right now, like there's small businesses there, and people are just coming along and smashing the windows, smash and grab, and constantly there was one business that twice in one day. I mean, they basically put new windows up, and then the same person went back and smashed it again, got in.
there's a fascinating thing happening there,
Yeah.
which brings us back to English Beat and Dave Wakeland. They had a song about shoplifting. You want to just walk into the store and pick up whatever you want. Um, I remember
Five-finger
listening to it
discount.
as a
Yeah.
teenager and thinking to myself, it's not something I ever did with shoplift. And it strikes me that there's a lot going on there. On the one hand, for example, in BC, we stopped charging people with
Hmm.
first-time shoplifting and probably even second-time shoplifting. And it used to be, even if they weren't charged, they had to go to a meeting with a probation officer for diversion.
Hmm.
Now you get a letter saying, don't do it again.
Hmm.
So the police look at it and say, why am I going to arrest somebody if they're just going to get a letter? So they don't even
Yeah.
bother to show up to arrest somebody. So
Oh God.
our our policy in BC is, it's not the federal government. It's not what the federal government was doing. It was the way we decided to implement
Oh.
our prosecution policy in BC that made
Hmm.
it like a non-consequential thing to
Hmm.
shoplift.
Yeah.
So there was that. That was number one. Number two is, in many respects, the social contract is breaking down.
Hmm.
And I was listening to one of your other podcasts at some point, and you guys were sort of where I was going on it. I can't remember which one this was now. But so you sit and you think to yourself, what keeps us in line? Why do people go to work and work at jobs that are terrible, meaningless jobs?
Hmm.
Why don't they up and leave? Why do they put up with a certain amount of crap? Like, gotta survive, but a lot of it has to do, I think, with this indoctrination that we had for millennia, of trying to fulfill some requirement of what our expectation is of the church and our God. And now
Hmm.
when we've got, a largely becoming godless, churchless population, do they still feel that same obligation to fit in as a cog?
Yeah.
And I think in this, after the pandemic, taught a lot of people, you know what? I don't want to be a fucking cog
Yeah.
anymore. And I'd rather go live in the interior on a hell of a lot less,
Hmm.
and not have to deal with that employer, not have to deal with. And then you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, what the hell is stopping me from whatever other thing that I don't like about the rules? And
Yeah.
sort of the rules-based order civilly is falling apart. We're worried about the rules-based order internationally when one country can invade another, and a bunch of people are saying, "Well, just let them have part." Like, and then we've got our own situation where people are looking at it saying, "I don't want to follow these rules anymore."
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Almost like
whatever.
they want to make their own rules based.
Yeah.
We're at the
And
top of the hour, by the way. So I don't know if you wanted to wrap
Did,
up.
did you
well,
want to be?
I'm good. I'm good for at least 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but I was talking to police officers about this at the beginning of the pandemic because a lot of them were really worried that toward the end of the pandemic, they thought people are going to feel I've been held back personally because
Yeah.
of this thing, and now that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Um,
The
and
rage, you know. Arr.
yeah, and we have seen that, and it's something that is a problem in our level of crime and disobeying the law, but a lot of people are questioning the law, period, more. And there's
Mm,
also so much less enforcement because there's so many police officers who retired. They
hmm.
haven't been replaced. The police officers who are out there are not accustomed to arresting people. Like, police
Right.
used to learn how to arrest people with drunk
Yeah.
driving cases. And in BC, nobody is arrested for drunk driving anymore. Like, it's
Oh
a
wow.
couple of percent. Everybody ends up dealt with at the roadside with an immediate roadside prohibition. Then Kyla's the one who's dealing
Yeah.
with it. And we see the police reports and we can see the police don't know how to do it.
Oh
All the
my God.
junior officers don't know how to do it. The old officers have lost their skill. They've been de-skilled.
Yeah.
It's skills
Especially once
atrophy.
they're on their phone, they're driving along and and yeah, I mean that's just it's crazy. Like I witnessed just down right near my intersection, like well, not even half a block from here, and there's a walk signal, and this person literally was on their phone, and I hear this man window was down, and he goes, yeah, so yeah, like it was like they were talking like yeah, like and I said, you like get the F off the phone. She looks over and she looks at me and I go, yeah, like off the phone. I said, I said, yeah, it's against the law. She goes, screw off. And then so she literally turned her head and there was another vehicle the light it turned green, and she literally almost got T-boned. I thought, oh my God. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I was just about struck crossing. I had there was a stop sign for the traffic that I was concerned with, and I started walking across the street. This was like a month or so ago, and like a guy, gray-haired guy, coming up in like a white Subaru, normal vehicle, talking on his phone, had his window down about that much.
Yeah.
Slams on the brakes, and I jumped back, and he was ready to go piling through that stop sign. Nobody stops at stop signs. I swear I'm the only person who does. I know Kyla does, so I should say that. But in any event, I look over, the guy's on his phone, his window's down, and I look at him like, what the hell are you doing? I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm less likely to be vocal about something like that. But I did say, I said, you're on your phone. You almost hit me, and you're on your phone. Like, just stating it as almost like a question. He's like, "Is his phone down?" The flagrant disregard for the cell phone law, the electronic device, flagrant disregard for red lights, stop signs, speed limits. I used to be able to understand a lot easier because, it's exceeding it a little bit. There's the margin of error in your speedometer. That's the reason the police are not stopping anybody unless they're at least 10 kilometers an hour over. Can they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? But it's gone from, where we all sort of expected we might speed a little bit from time to time or not be perfect on that, to I don't need to stop for this stop sign. I can just roll through, and if it's clear, I can go. I don't, the cell phone law doesn't apply to me because I'm a good driver. Red lights, everybody else is going through, so I'm going to go through. And now the danger on the road is terrible.
Yeah,
terrible.
I always tell my son, I say as a pedestrian, I say, I teach him. I say all people in cars are what, and then he says are idiots, because that's basically what I tell him. All people in cars are idiots, and
we know our brains work
he
differently
gets it
when
now.
we get behind the wheel for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I always tell my kids, and the RCMP got in trouble in Richmond recently for that video that they released that was trying to educate people about the dangers of. And they showed somebody, and everybody was like, "This is victim blaming." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to just step in front of a car and be run over and then have the remedy of don't blame me." I tell my kids when we're standing on the edge of the road, I say, you watch the direction of traffic. You're always watching the direction of traffic. If you're standing near the lights, stay behind the post and figure out where you have to jump to for safety. Because people drive like assholes, and they make bad decisions, and half the time they're not paying attention, and then 5% or 10% of those people are impaired by something.
Yeah, or and there's also that ripple effect too, because it's they hit somebody else, and then the other car will spin, or truck or whatever it may be spins right out, and you could be just walking on the sidewalk, and then boom. And another one of my pet peeves too is that even as a pedestrian, if I see somebody walking across on the crosswalk and they got a phone and they're not even paying attention to what's going on around them. So I've learned
the countdown timer. The countdown timer has turned everybody into a scofflaw. And again, I'm like the only person who isn't. You're not supposed to cross when the countdown timer is going.
I know.
People can't make a right-hand turn, and you're blocking up. You're holding traffic back. It was, the traffic lights are programmed. The road is designed for everybody to get where they're going safely. And if you all follow the rules, you'll be fine. But then you've got those people who will run out because they've got 3 seconds left on the countdown timer. And then the guy who's trying to turn right is stuck in their truck trying to turn right, holding back traffic all over the place. It is just that the countdown timer has been one more thing that just persuades people that they can disregard the rules.
But here's a funny one. Well, I mean, it's funny, but it's not. So I remember in downtown Langley, right on Willowbrook Drive. Do you know Langley at all, Paul?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I used to have to go out there a lot 10 years ago.
Well, we got 200th Street, Willowbrook Drive. Okay, so you got this walk signal, and then you got the Meridian right there. So the walk signal, and it doesn't give you enough time to get across. So I remember one year walking across, and I got to the Meridian, and it says don't walk. And this cop was on the other side, and he was kind of sitting conspicuous right on the other side, doing had his gun out there watching for speeders. And he goes, I hear this real loud, "Sir, what are you doing?" I go, "I'm right in the middle." I go, "It says don't walk. Keep going, keep going." So I get across, and I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm watching for speeders, but I'm also watching for people on their phones." And he says, and maybe they don't have their seatbelt on. Yeah, numerous. And this other lady, she went racing by. He goes, "Stop!" And she kept going. He goes, "Well, Nelson." Yeah, he says, "Northbound." He says, "Plate number, blah blah." And then they got the lady further up. I hear, I'm like, "Uh oh." Yep. So they came right around the corner, and so I walked up there, and there were like 4 cop cars, and all for one lady. And then, but meanwhile, they caused all the traffic to back up. But yeah, it's one thing I learned is that, yeah, if you're already walking, keep going. Like, don't stop. And I thought,
well, of course, you don't want to. Safety is the number one thing, right?
Yeah.
And then there's, if you're in a circumstance where it's exigent circumstances and it's to protect yourself, then that's what you do.
Yeah,
is you keep
because this other person was cutting right across, like they wouldn't let me across, and it was just they kept on turning. I thought, oh my God. He says, then he finally got out there and he says, "Stop," and he let me cross. I'm going, oh man. I said, "That's never happened." He goes, "Yeah, well, you get some losers who just don't know what they're doing."
Well, I'll tell you, most of the traffic cops and are actually really good officers, and the ones who want to do it have figured out that it's one of the best jobs in policing, because you're out of the detachment, you get to talk to people. Most of the people are pretty nice. You're in the fresh air, even if it's along the side of the road, and that visible enforcement is one of the best ways to persuade people that you should be following the rules. The rules are there for a reason. If I was to be a cop, it's the only job I'd want would be a traffic police officer.
Yeah.
Even if you get sworn at.
With before we end the segment, there was one little clip that I actually wanted to kind of get your take on here. I'm just gonna play it here, and
Always lost.
My rock.
In this life,
He's all I've got.
Deandra. Deandra's my friend. She's
even
an
if
attorney
if nobody knows you, they still know that song. That's how popular that song is.
I think it's a pretty popular song. It was inspired by Junior Brown. I thought if I'm gonna do a song about a lawyer from Texas,
She's all I've got.
I better make Texas sound. Deandra, you kept me free. I drive around singing that song.
yeah, but that's really good. I love that video because it's just the setting that you put in there too. The scenery in there. It's really neat on how you did the filming of it.
Well, most of it's here, like within 100 meters of my office.
Oh my!
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it looks like it's Texas, but there's an old apartment building across the way. They were very hot, dry days. There's a building that's like the office portion of a church, and so most of it was nearby, shot nearby, and then the scenes of the truck, of course, are just me and my video in the truck. The one I did for No Justice Burrito.
Oh, I love that
was
one
a lot of fun. Yeah, we went down to the Hastings Mill Museum, which is like Point Grey Road and Dunbar or Alma in Vancouver. I took my kids and they shot the entire video. My children, 11 and 14, were my videographers. And we wrote that song in a week. I was actually inspired. If you go back to the original video of that fellow when he was arrested, he said to the officers, "Can't we just talk man to man with a burrito? I've got a burrito in my hand." And that was originally what I was going to write the song on. "Can't we talk man to man? I got a burrito in my hand." And then as I started to do it, I didn't want to mock him. Although I've talked to his lawyer since, and she says, he would have been fine with it, one way or another. But I didn't, I'm speaking of musical advocacy for somebody else, and I'm not hired, and so I'm not a lawyer. And so I thought, I better be pretty careful here about what I do. But we had a lot of fun shooting that video, me and my kids. And after we did that, and released it, I've just been eating burritos all the time. Like I'm craving burritos. No justice burrito. I just wanted my burrito. Justice and my burrito. I just wanted my burrito. I did no harm. Please let me be. Yeah. And it's a like a 2-line chorus, and the chorus doesn't come till the end of the song. And I thought, I'm just going to do something weird. It's going to do something really
throw
weird.
It in there,
and put it out there. And a lot of people like it. No Justice Burrito. I've had so much great feedback on that one. I know the Fort Collins police in Fort Collins, Colorado, have seen the video and are not happy about it. I hope that that fellow ends up with a good judgment or good settlement, because my gosh, they sprayed the pepper spray into his eyes from looks like about 6 inches away, and pepper spray is not supposed to be used unless it's 6 feet away, because it is impacting, and he has permanent vision loss as a result of that. And what did he do? All he did was, they had his driver's license already. They had his ID. All he did was say, I'm not taking this appearance notice to court. And if he didn't take it, they could get a summary judgment. It was like a ticket, right? Or they could serve it to him another day. He said, "You've got my ID. You can do this later."
Yeah.
And they grabbed him, pinned him to the ground, claimed that he was obstructing justice, held him on the ground as he said, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" And they sprayed pepper spray right into his eyes. And then he was charged with obstruction, and he had to defend it. I mean, it's just shocking. But his lawyer, Sarah Shelke, who also deserves a song as much as Deandra, less of a character than Deandra. Deandra's just absolutely a laugh. But she has sued that police force so many times now. She actually offered a $50,000 reward to the chief. They would be paid to the city if the chief stepped down. Because she was so disgusted with the way that it's run. But everything, as I say, everything's provincial. You are dealing with your issues, and you're an expert in your issues. I'm an expert in my few little things that I'm in, and everybody's dealing with things differently. The lawyers in Toronto or defend criminal cases are happy to use "lawyer told me not to talk to you," and the people here are like, "Well, I don't know. Doroshenko came up with that." So.
And then some people will use bear spray for bears. I mean, that's what it's for.
Well, yeah.
Geez, like, people. It's like, it's like, oh, geez, yeah.
I was recently looking at the Wikipedia page of people who have died from bear attacks in the last decade or so, and a number of them, they found empty bear spray cans there. Like, okay. Maybe bear spray is not the way to go.
No.
Anyway,
but I want to thank you, Paul, for coming on today. This was wonderful to have you on. We'll have to do this again for sure.
Well, it was my pleasure. I don't know that we got into anything substantial, but it sure was a lot of fun.
It was a lot
of fun, though.
It's more of a just a relaxed atmosphere, and that's what I create shows. And today it was great. It was awesome just to kind of see who Paul is, and if everybody to listen to Paul explaining about advocacy versus music, and like Paul, I mean, your music videos they rock. There's a lot more to pump out there, and I can't wait to hear more of your wicked tunes.
We
There's
didn't
more coming.
acknowledge your pink unicorn, so maybe we could sing the unicorn song.
Oh, the unicorn song.
There were green alligators and long monkeys.
The reason I put this pink unicorn up here is because things change so rapidly, because it might mean one thing for one person and poof, it's magic, and it means for other people. And
Yeah.
Do you know the song, the Pink Fluffy Unicorn Dancing on Rainbows song?
No.
Pink
No.
fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. Pink. It's great. Find it. It's on.
Okay.
It's on YouTube. It's actually a really
check
catchy
that out.
little song, and it's so funny and irreverent. It's that's what I think of when I see pink unicorns. Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows.
Pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows.
Yeah, we put this up because it gets people just laughing, because like, what? I go, yeah, it's this policy, poof, say you can have this, but you can't have that. And
Well, I started using the term because of the clawbacks, right? They claw back, the provincial government claws back survivors' pensions as unearned income. And I think that's a pink unicorn. That's one example of a pink unicorn. So I started using that in my letters to the government.
Well, you could actually, there was another thing you guys touched on a different one. Sort of the discussion about how we persuade ourselves what's important, and the antiquated thoughts that are pervasive, where you got to pull up your bootstraps thinking that is really leftover lousy thing of Christianity, persuading people that who are in poverty or disabled or in some other circumstance that they should just be able to fix it themselves, which is such absolute bullshit. And our whole mindset is like, we're going to try and poke you rather than help you. We're going to try and, we're not going to help you. We're not going to be compassionate. We're not going to recognize that your circumstances are what your circumstances are, and that we all have this, path, and that we're all different. We're just going to try and impose something on you, and that's going to be good enough, and you better, that's your own damn problem. And it's just really like, it's really a repulsive attitude that's left over.
It is. It's like when there's like a wheelchair accessible spot for someone to park the vehicle in. And then you got somebody, wants to park there because they want to be closer to the store, and they can't be bothered to park at another spot right beside it. But no, we got to park right there.
Yeah, there's these pervasive attitudes that we have to fight, but a lot of them are, aspects of it are, as I say, are falling apart right now.
And just crumbling beneath, right in front of us.
That's for another discussion.
Yes. Exactly. That's all. I'll have to have you on as a part 2 on that one. We'll dive into a lot of that stuff.
We can do that. Okay, you guys.
That's great.
Enjoy your days.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Care.
Thank you so much, Paul. And next time I'm in Vancouver, I'll give you a message, and we'll meet up.
Yeah, we can include you in one of my music videos then.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Paul.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.